How's it going, everyone? Over the past few weeks, I've been trying to answer a question. Did we miss the stock market bottom? Over the past month and a half, we've had some of the largest daily drops and some of the largest daily gains in history. 2 of those days are in the top 5 worst days in the stock market history for the Dow. During that same time, we've had some of the largest ups we've ever had in the stock market history as well. With the market in so much flux, how can anyone know when we're going to hit the bottom or if we've already hit the bottom? Over the past week or so, I've been researching what stock market experts say to try and figure out where this stock market is heading. In this video, I'm going to share with you what the experts are saying, and I'm also going to share with you 3 reasons why I think we've already hit the bottom. I'm also going to share 3 reasons why we may find a new bottom, just like we did back in March. There have been some really wild price swings in the stock market over the past couple months, and sometimes there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. Good news brings dropping stocks, and bad news, which wasn't as bad as expected, brings massive gains like last week when the markets cheered the news that the drop in GDP wasn't nearly as bad as expected. So what do these so-called experts say about this? Back on March 15th, Goldman Sachs warned that the S&P 500 may not stop dropping until it gets down to around 2,000. However, last week, the S&P 500 had the best weekly gain it has had in 45 years. And now Goldman Sachs strategists have changed their minds. On Monday, they came out and said that the previous prediction of a 2,000 bottom for the S&P is no longer likely because of the efforts from the Fed and Congress, as well as the apparent flattening of the curve. So they predicted that the bottom is in and that the recovery will be fairly quick and the S&P will end 2020 up at about 3,200. So how could this projection 3,200 by the end of the year happen that Goldman Sachs has made? I'm going to give you 3 reasons why I think we've already hit the market bottom and we're on our way back up. The first reason is the worst is over. The numbers from the pandemic are starting to look promising, and from what we can tell initially, the so-called flattening of the curve has seemed to work so far, and we could be on the downward slope. There has been talk of starting to pull back some of the lockdowns and the stay-at-home requirement, and at least 6 European countries have already started to lift some of theirs. If the worst of the pandemic is truly over, the market shouldn't come close to those bottoms we had back in March. The second reason I have for you is I think spending is going to return. People have been cooped up for weeks, and they're going a little crazy. One thing Americans like to do is go somewhere and spend money, whether that's going to restaurants, shopping at retail locations. People like spending money, and especially if that money was unexpected and comes from a stimulus check from the government. People are eager to get out of their homes and do something, and usually that something's going to involve spending money. Stimulus checks have arrived for some people and are arriving for others as we speak. Millions will be spending their stimulus money, leading to a quick recovery as businesses benefit from all the money that's spent and sales return to pre-lockdown levels. This will lead to optimism, even in the face of the upcoming earnings that have already come out and some look really bad. But this optimistic growth that we'll see from the sales that they're experiencing from the stimulus money are going to lead to some growths in the stock market. The third reason I have for you is the Fed and throwing money at the problem. The Federal Reserve and Congress will continue to throw money at this problem, and the markets will applaud in return. They have already said that they'll do whatever it takes to avoid an economic collapse. Printing money seems to be something they haven't shied away from recently, and I assume that will continue to be the case. In the short term, that will lift stocks and hopefully get us through this economic downturn. We're going to have to worry about the debt at some point, but at least in the short term, stocks will probably go up, and they're not going to go down to those bottoms we saw in March. So we're in for a quick recovery then, right? Did we miss the stock market bottom and we're in for a quick recovery? Well, Goldman Sachs says that we aren't going to come close to those bottoms again and have adjusted their forecast that they had back in March. There's other experts that aren't so sure. One of these experts that isn't so optimistic is Neil Kashkari, the head of the Federal Reserve Bank in Minnesota. During an interview with Face the Nation on CBS last Sunday, he warned that we're going to have up to 18 months of shutdowns. 18 months? A year and a half? I don't know about you, but being stuck inside for a month or so already has been enough. 18 months of on-again, off-again shutdowns would be devastating to the world and its economy. His argument is that until we get an effective therapy or vaccine, we could see spikes in cases, which would lead to lockdowns again. If this happens, we could easily see a new bottom in the stock market. Another expert, Geeta Gopinath, the top economist from the International Monetary Fund, said much worse growth outcomes are possible and maybe even likely. And the IMF expects that the US economy will shrink 5.9% this year, which would be the biggest drop since the 2008-2009 financial crisis. If the economy really drops that far, we might see a new stock market bottom, unfortunately. In an interview with CNBC, another expert, Mark Mobius, who was once named top 10 money managers of the 20th century, claimed, "I don't think we're at the absolute bottom yet because the implications of this shutdown are incredible. So many businesses, large and small, have been affected by this pandemic. We are only beginning to see the effects of the pandemic as the Q1 earnings numbers are coming through, and they aren't looking good. If the recovery is worse than expected, we could see a new stock market bottom." Canaccord Genuity Chief Marketing Strategist Tom Dwyer told MarketWatch in a Monday interview, "Bear markets typically have three phases. You get panic, the relief rally, and then you get frustration. We're just entering the frustration part, which is the epic battle between monetary policy and economic damage." While he doesn't call for a new stock market bottom, he warns that we aren't out of the woods yet as far as drops go. He continues, "We don't yet have an idea of the extent of the damage, and all this could mean some rough days are ahead, especially since we don't know how quickly people will return to work and normal life." So here are my 3 reasons why I think we could test a new bottom. Number 1, more lockdowns. There could be spikes in cases as we lift some of these lockdowns, which could lead to more shutdowns. As Neil Kashkari said, if we can't find a vaccine or an effective treatment, we could see cases rise again, which could lead to countries closing businesses and shutting everything down again. If this happens, the stock market's going to be in trouble and fear could take over and we could see a new bottom. The number 2 reason, fear. Even if there aren't more lockdowns, people might be overly cautious and fearful to go out in public, to go to restaurants, to travel, to go on airplanes, and they also might be more cautious with how they spend their money. Fear of this pandemic happening again or what might come economically after this pandemic may make them more careful in their spending, which normally isn't a bad thing. But when you're trying to stimulate the economy by spending and people aren't willing to spend, that can be a problem. People may realize they need to establish an emergency fund and put their stimulus in there, which isn't a bad idea. Stimulus money is a perfect way to start an emergency fund. But will people still go to restaurants, go on airplanes, go to sporting events, go on cruises, see movies, etc.? I'm sure there's some people that will, but other people are going to be fearful of going into crowds and into public places. And that fear, I think, could cripple the economy more than we're expecting. And that fear could lead to possibly a new stock market bottom. The 3rd reason why I think we might test a new bottom are unknowns. We've never had a pandemic before like this one in the modern era. There are so many unknowns. How many small businesses are going to fail because of this? We just heard today that the Small Business Loan Fund of $250 billion has already been allocated, and there are a bunch of small businesses that haven't received funding. Will companies that laid people off hire those people back quickly? When they laid people off, are they simply going to hire them right back as soon as it starts looking good again? My guess is the companies are going to be overly cautious. And the unknown of that is something that I think could send the stock market back down. The latest unemployment numbers are that there are 22 million people that have filed for unemployment and out of work because of the pandemic. Will most of those people get their jobs back? Nobody knows. But my guess is it's not going to happen overnight. These unknowns make me think that there's a chance we could see a new stock market bottom. So many stocks have lost a lot of value. But if you want 2 free stocks, sign up for Webull and deposit $100 and you'll get 2 free stocks, one for signing up and another when you deposit $100. And the second one could be worth up to $1,400. I have a link in the description below to sign up for Webull and to get your 2 free stocks. So overall, where do I stand on whether we've seen the stock market bottom or not? I'm not sure, but I'm optimistic that once the lockdowns are lifted and people are able to go out in public again, I think people will. I think they're going to go shopping. I think they're going to spend money. And I think the economy is going to recover. I don't think we're going to see those stock market bottoms, but some of those unknowns that we talked about before scare me, and I still think there's a chance we could see bottoms. I am hopeful that that's not the case, and I don't think that will be the case, but the recovery is going to be long and slow. I think a year from now, hopefully we'll be getting back to more of a sense of normalcy, as long as there's no other economic catastrophes that happen between now and then. When people get the okay, I do think they're going to travel. I think they're going to get on planes. They're going to go on cruises. They're going to spend money. They're going to go to movies when they can. But like I was saying, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. And I don't think the recovery is going to happen overnight. But overall, I think within the next year or so, we may even see some of those highs that we saw at the beginning of this year, and we'll be back. That's barring, of course, any unforeseen other economic collapses or uncertainty that we might face. If the virus starts to ramp back up again and shutdowns start happening again, all bets are off and the stock market could be in serious trouble. But I'm hoping that that's not the case. And I'm hoping that these measures that we've done so far and the slow rollout are going to keep the pandemic at bay and the outbreak at a minimum. And I think overall, we should have a good recovery. These really are unprecedented times. But I think as long as we're optimistic, we stay positive, and we don't let fear take over, we're all going to be fine. The economy is going to recover at some point. It always does. Hopefully it doesn't take a long time to do so. But thank you so much for watching. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to continue with the stock market, this crazy economic environment we're in, and I'm going to be doing more videos on the economic collapse that we've seen so far, and hopefully a lot of it will be good news. Wash your hands, stay safe, and I'm out of here.